Holy cow, let's try this again! If you're watching, if you're watching after the fact, this is the third time I've attempted to do this show. The first time, the power flickered, restarted everything. The second time, I didn't realize, but the chat was trying to get my attention. There was a lot of lag, stuttering, stopping. And then I stopped the stream and everything crashed. And I was like, so anyway, I have an incredibly powerful computer. So it's not the computer, I know that. Could have been the weather. It's a little rainy today. Who knows? Technology, right? But I thought I would jump on and start again. So forgive me if you're going to hear myself repeat myself, but it's important stuff. I like shows to be fresh and current, and that's why I'm doing it again. Fuck it, we'll do it again! What's going on, everybody? My name's Dave McRae, coming to you live from the Voice Man Studios in Toronto, Canada. This is episode 268 of McRae Live. Robert Englund and John Carpenter to receive a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame in 2025. Do they deserve it? What is it all about? How does the Hall of Fame work? All that kind of jazz. I'm going to be talking about it here today on today's show. Hopefully the show stays up and nothing crashes, which would be nice. Damn internet. That's what we're going to talk about. And do they deserve it? Do they not deserve it? What is the process like? I include the Hollywood Walk of Fame stuff kind of in the same realm as like Rotten Tomatoes and award shows and submissions and all that kind of stuff, because a lot of moviegoers, a lot of fans really don't know how any of this works. They think they have an idea, but they really don't know how any of this works. And it becomes very obvious to me when I read people trying to have a debate about it or talk about it in the comment sections on places like Twitter and Facebook and all that kind of stuff. Now, I've worked 23 years in the entertainment business. I do not pretend to know everything. I certainly do not have a PhD in every single thing in the entertainment business, but having worked a little while in the business, I've grown to learn a lot more about it, a lot more about the business I'm a part of. And I'm a very inquisitive person anyway, so I like to learn from other people who know more about their side of the entertainment business than I do. And then sometimes they want to learn a little bit more about my side of the business and, all that kind of stuff, right? And a rising tide raises all ships. And I find this stuff really fascinating and really interesting. But it is interesting to me that I've always found it interesting, I should say, that there are a lot of people, I do understand it, but there are a lot of people that really just don't know how any of this works. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, when it comes to movies, right, there are movie fans, and there's a lot of movie fans that have a lot of movie podcasts, and a lot of movie fans that like to take to Twitter and to Facebook and give their movie opinions on everything and anything that's coming out. And, one of the good examples of the last couple of days would be that there's been leaked photos of David Cornsweet in the Superman costume, and people are losing their minds. It looks like shit. It looks like God shit. It looks like shit. And I'm thinking, but so does the Michael Myers mask in BTS shots from, like, do people not understand that you're seeing it, like, the context for which you're seeing it is like somebody sneaking around behind a bush, taking a picture in brightly lit sunlight, and he's kind of there turning. Like, do you not understand that? Anyway, that's a whole other thing. Anything can look like dog shit with the wrong camera, with the wrong person taking it, with the wrong context, with the wrong anything. I guarantee you, when that Superman movie comes out, you're gonna be like, oh, the suit looks amazing. Because it's a whole fucking thing. But so you just see a lot of people, it just grinds my gears. There's so much that grinds my gears. And so when the news came out yesterday that Robert Englund and John Carpenter were going to be getting their stars on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, I was like, oh, that's so cool. And I thought, you know what? That's well-deserved. That's well-deserved. That's well-earned. I like that. It was also surprising to me, although not surprising at the same time, when I took to, movie Twitter and movie Facebook and I was reading all the comments, people chiming in. There's a lot of people that thought that they already had their stars on the Walk of Fame. There's a lot of people that thought that they should have gotten them like decades ago. I absolutely disagree with that, by the way. And I will get into why. And there's so many people that really, again, just don't know kind of how this all works. I mean, when you think of the Oscars, for example, right? There are, at least it seems like there's a large section of movie fandom that they don't think of this consciously. It's more of a subconscious thing, but kind of treat Oscar nominations like there is this board, like this long table, and there's like 25 people that sit on this board, and each year they just choose movies to nominate. You know what I'm saying? I think we're going to nominate let's nominate. So what do you got? You got this. What do you got? And it comes down because I see a lot of people saying things like, well, how come that movie didn't get nominated? That movie should have been nominated. I can't believe that person didn't get nominated. I can't believe that person didn't get nominated. And my first thought is always not, how come they didn't get nominated? My first thought is always, well, hang on a sec. Were they submitted for nomination? Were they submitted for consideration? There's a lot of people that don't understand that you have to be submitted either by, like for example, A24, right, did Pearl. And there were a lot of people that were like, I can't believe Pearl didn't get nominated. I can't believe Mia Goth didn't get nominated. Well, my thought is, well, did A24 submit it? Like, did A24 submit Pearl for consideration? Because if A24 didn't, then I'm not saying that had they done that, it would have been nominated, but you can't get nominated if you're not submitted. So maybe that's why. Right? And there's so many people that actually are like, wait, but you have to submit? Yeah, you got to pay money and submit for consideration. And then if you're considered for a nomination, then there's a whole other set of criteria that the studios must follow to build their marketing campaigns and their Oscar campaigns. And it's a whole thing. And maybe Pearl didn't get submitted because A24, I don't know, by the way, if it wasn't submitted. But let's say it wasn't. Maybe A24 didn't submit it because they thought, well, we've got Everything Everywhere All at Once, which is hot as gangbusters right now. And we think this is our best chance on getting an Oscar nom and maybe even winning. And if we're going to spend millions of dollars, between submissions and marketing campaigns and Oscar campaigns and all this kind of stuff, we're going to want to spend it on the movie we think that has the best probability of getting that nomination and winning. And maybe they took a look at Pearl and was like, you know what I'm saying? And a lot of horror movies may not get submitted. Not every movie is up for grabs every year. You have to submit those movies for consideration. And not every movie gets submitted. So, but a lot of people don't understand that. They think that every movie at any time can just be picked. That's not how it works. That's not how it works. If the studios really feel they've got an Oscar winner here or an Oscar contender, they have to submit that for consideration. And maybe A24 was like, Pearl, great movie, great performance. But we're going all in on, Everything Everywhere All at Once. And so people are like, oh, I didn't know. I thought it was it's not a board of 10 people just picking movies. You know what I mean? That's not how it works. So I lump the Hollywood Walk of Fame kind of as a cousin to that. The Hollywood Walk of Fame is not something where, where there's like a group of people that just randomly every year pick people they want to nominate, right? You actually have to, the person has to be submitted for nomination. So I can guarantee you, unless it was a surprise, I can guarantee you that Robert Englund and John Carpenter were very aware that they were submitted for consideration. Now, their social media makes you think, oh my God, this is amazing, this is amazing. Now, there's a bit of nuance there. Yes, are they surprised maybe and humbled? Oh my God, I've been chosen. Fair enough. But I can almost guarantee you that they were aware that they were being submitted because they have to be aware, according to the Walk of Fame rules. And so, they have to, for all intents and purposes, be okay with them being submitted. So it's a fascinating thing. And when we think about, award shows and things like that, again, whether it's the Oscars or whether it's the Emmys or whether it's the Grammy, they have to be submitted. There's a submission fee, things you fill out. The Voice Arts Awards, right? The 4 nominations that I have. I had to submit my work for consideration, right? And there's fees on top of that. And that's nothing new. All major award shows do that. That's just kind of how it works. It's not, you aren't just randomly picked. It's not as virtuous as you might think it is, or that the industry leads you to believe it is. Like somebody's just sitting at home and all of a sudden they get a call and they're like, oh my God, I had no idea. It's not like, unless the management team or the studio does it behind their back, not behind their back, but does it as a surprise because most actors, most people at the very least, not all the time, but most are aware that they're being considered because their work or whatever is being submitted. And then the surprise and the honor and the humbleness comes from, wow, I've been chosen. Do you know what I mean? So I guarantee you that John Carpenter and Robert Englund, at the very least, probably knew they were being submitted for it. But they were chosen. So anyway, we'll talk more about the submission process here in a second. But the question is, do they deserve it? Well, if the Walk of Fame was virtuous, and if it really was like that, like there were no fees, nobody had to pay anything, it was just an honor that was bestowed on you. It was given to you. You don't have to pay anything. You don't have to do anything. You don't have to submit anything. You don't have to fill out anything. It's just, you get a call one day and it's like, hey, you deserve it because you're just fucking amazing. And we were just thinking about you. And we just thought, hey, here you go. Yes, in a perfect world, that would be how it would be. And it would be amazing. But that's not how it is. And so when I look at Robert Englund and I look at John Carpenter, are they deserving of this Hollywood star on the Walk of Fame? Well, the short answer is yes. I believe that both John Carpenter and Robert Englund deserve a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. I believe that. That's the short answer. The longer answer is, okay, so we look at John Carpenter. When I look at John Carpenter's filmography as a filmmaker, and listen, I'm not throwing shade at John Carpenter. I would be totally fine being in a position to have his filmography. But when we look at his filmography as a whole, okay, his filmography. Now, this is just my opinion. You're free to disagree. When I look at John Carpenter's filmography, is this a Hall of Fame or Walk of Fame? But is this a Hall of Fame filmography? Not really. But why is John Carpenter deserving of this then, right? Because when you look at his filmography, it's like, he's got some good ones in there, but I mean, it's not like Spielberg or something. You know what I'm saying? Like, what's going on? It's not even like Hitchcock. Well, John Carpenter came around at the right time. And his first gigantic film, Halloween, changed the face of independent horror, was the highest grossing independent horror movie in motion picture history. Okay. He's got films like The Thing, which didn't do very well at first, but in retrospect has become a classic. Escape from New York, The Fog. He was part of like what Spielberg was to sort of new Hollywood. Spielberg, Scorsese, Francis Ford Coppola, Brian De Palma, George Lucas, in a general sense to Hollywood. They called it New Hollywood, right? What they were to New Hollywood, your Carpenter and your Craven were to like the horror genre in and around that time. Because genre horror, again, it's had trouble with respect in a big sort of way. It's not usually nominated for the big awards. Maybe it's because it's not usually submitted, which could be a thing too. And so when you look at John Carpenter in that respect, when you look at his filmography objectively, I don't really see it as a Hall of Fame career. He certainly got like big movies in there. And that's my point. When you look at the thing as a whole, not so much, but when you hone in on a very specific era, a very specific, say, decade or close to it, like 78 to 84. Oh my God. I mean, he is and was and still is to this day one of the most influential horror directors and horror filmmakers of all time. And he was a Swiss Army knife way back in the day. I mean, he was writer, director, producer, composer, sometimes actor, right? He was doing everything in indie horror, and the success of Halloween, and now Halloween has gone on to become a legendary franchise. And he's a huge part of that. And his influence, it's his influence, right? When you look at his influence, you know, and how he is still today influencing filmmakers and the horror, that part of the 80s, and we're going to talk about Robert here in a second, he falls into the same kind of thing. That part of the 80s, that horror, that golden age of this new slasher kind of craze is sort of just kind of frozen in time. It's a product of its time, frozen in time, and it's something that I don't think we're ever going to see again. And so when you look at John Carpenter and how he's still, I mean, his style, his music, you know, I mean, Stranger Things is John Carpenter all over the place when it comes to the mood and the music and all that kind of stuff. He is one of the great influential horror filmmakers from a certain very specific time period, right? And because of that, because it was so heavy, because it was so magical, because it was so short, sweet, and fast, and huge, and impactful, it had enough staying power to penetrate the pop culture zeitgeist, even though John Carpenter, his influence wasn't the same, let's say in the late 80s and in the 90s and certainly in the 2000s, right? But because between 78 and like 85, it was massive. And that staying power was just so huge. And that right there is what I believe has catapulted him to Hall of Fame status. I'm not knocking his career as a filmmaker. I'm just simply saying when we look at it objectively and as a whole, we can't say that he's had a Hall of Fame career, but we can certainly say that there is a section of his filmography that very few filmmakers ever have the opportunity to live and feel. That kind of success and that kind of staying power and that kind of influential impact on up and coming directors within that genre. You know what I'm saying? It's just, it's huge. It's absolutely huge. So does he deserve a star on the Walk of Fame based on that and his influence and that time period? Yes, absolutely. 100%. When we look at Robert Englund, very similar, right? When you look at Robert Englund, okay? When we look at his filmography, right? We look at Robert Englund's filmography. Is Robert Englund's filmography, remember that's everything, is that a Hall of Fame career? No, not really. Not even close. I mean, he's really a character actor and has had a solid working career as an actor. However, when you hone in and you go beep, 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 and you hone in, hang on a sec. I think my camera is, my autofocus is on. I just noticed that. Let me just take the autofocus off. Sorry about this, guys. If you've noticed the camera going in and out, my apologies. It's off now. So I'll start all over. No, I'm just kidding. But when you look at Robert Englund's filmography, right, as a whole, right, this is my opinion. To me, that's not a Hall of Fame career. But when you go boop, 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 and you hone in on a certain time frame, oh my God. Again, very similar to Carpenter in the sense of he was cast in a role that went on to become one of the most iconic horror villains in the history of motion pictures. He is, and this is thrown around a lot, but it is true. It's not really modern anymore, but for all intents and purposes, he is a modern day, like that character, Freddy's a modern day Frankenstein, Dracula, Wolfman, he's a Bela Lugosi. He's a Christopher Lee he is absolutely 100% because of the Freddy Krueger success, because Freddy. And Robert Englund said something which was really interesting. I forget what interview it was, but he said, and he was being humble, and I don't totally agree with this 100% because I think he was just being modest. But at the same time, there is validity to what he's saying. He says, wait, I'm not famous. He says, Freddy Krueger is famous. And to a degree, again, you instill some nuance. I understand what he's saying. Now, of course, I mean, he played the character brilliantly, and he's the only one to have done it outside of Jackie Earle Haley. And so when you look at Robert Englund and everything he brought to the character, he is synonymous with that role. And that role, the Freddy role, penetrated the pop culture zeitgeist. That means crossing the threshold of his own genre. Right? Not just staying in the genre, but crossing the threshold into the pop culture where everybody knows who Freddy Krueger is. Non-horror fans know who Freddy Krueger is. Your mom, your grandma knows who Freddy Krueger is. That's a different stratosphere. That's a different level, a very different level. And he played him beautifully and professionally through what, 8 films. And that is a success and heights that very few actors get. And he did it, and it's incredible, and it is one of the greatest villains in the history of horror, in the history of cinema, no doubt about it, 100%. And based on that and that alone, because of the pop culture impact and staying power. That's why I don't believe that Robert Englund should have received a star decades ago. Like some of the, what decades ago? What do you mean, after the first Elm Street or something? What are you talking about? No, of course not. I'm somebody that likes to look at these things, and I understand that this is not how the Hall of, or the Walk of Fame works, and the Chinese theater and the handprints and all that kind of stuff. It's kind of a mixed sort of, it's very convoluted now. But I'm somebody that believes, and maybe this is just me, my utopian way of thinking when it comes to this kind of stuff, but I don't believe that somebody should have a star on the Walk of Fame who's like, 10 years old, just because they've had some great success, or even somebody who's 30 years old. Obviously it's nice when the person is alive to get the honor and experience it. So, and thankfully both Englund and Carpenter are both alive. But it kind of makes sense. Like, could they have gotten this honor? Okay. Could they have gotten this honor a couple of decades ago? Yes, they could have gotten this honor a couple of decades ago. Fair, because they had that their impact had already been there. But nonetheless, I do think there should be sort of a waiting period, if you will. I think there's a lot of people that get bestowed the honor because in reality, it's about marketing. And there are people that get the honor that do deserve it, but there are a lot of people that get it that don't, or don't yet. I mean, let's not forget, Britney Spears got her star on the Walk of Fame before Steven Spielberg did. Britney Spears got hers on the Walk of Fame before Harrison Ford did. I'm just saying, right? I'm not saying she wasn't deserved, but you know what I mean? Like, a lot of these things are now used as marketing, and it's not as virtuous as you might think it is. There's reasons, and this might surprise you, but did you know that Julia Roberts, Denzel Washington, Leonardo DiCaprio, Al Pacino, George Clooney, Prince, Madonna, did you know that they do not have a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame? What? How do they not have a star on the Walk of Fame? Because it's not 10 people on a board that just pick people to put in the ground, and it ain't free either. You have to be submitted, like I was talking about with the Oscars. You have to be submitted. There's criteria, and there's a whole submission process. There's a fee you have to pay, and when you are chosen, and you can turn it down. And I would gather, I don't know if all of them have, but I would gather that Denzel and Julia Roberts and DiCaprio and George Clooney, they've probably all been offered a star on the Walk of Fame. I would assume so. And the reason why they don't have one is probably because they turned it down. Maybe they think it's a little hokey. Maybe they realize, it's not what it used to be. Like it's all about marketing. And maybe they don't want to pay $75,000 to have it installed and taken care of. Yes, there's a $75,000 fee to have the star created, installed. I don't know if it covers the ceremony or not, or if the Hollywood Chamber of Commerce covers that. I'm not sure. But $75,000 to have it created, installed, and the maintenance and keep up. And I don't know if that's $75,000 a year or if it could be, a $75,000 fee. And then maybe it's $10,000 every year after that to keep up, maintenance. I'm not sure. Now, do the actors pay for that out of pocket? Well, depending on who you are, maybe. Or sometimes it can be the studios, it can be your management team that takes care of it or whatever the case is. It's not necessarily coming out of the actor's pocket, but that's still a fee. That's still $75,000. So as you can see, it is, and you have to submit, right? You have to submit. Let's go over to the other screen here, and this comes to us. Let me put on my glasses from the Walk of Fame website. And you'll see how this works here. The Hollywood Chamber of Commerce is accepting nominations for the Hollywood Walk of Fame. The submission deadline is Friday, May 31st, 2024. There are no exceptions. All nominations will be considered in June's annual Walk of Fame committee meeting. The Walk of Fame committee will make selections for the year 2025. Nominations are accepted online only. There is a $250 application fee, not mobile friendly. The categories are motion pictures, television, radio, recording, live theater performance, sports, entertainment. All nominations must include photo of the nominee, brief bio of nominee, no more than 750 characters, nominees' qualifications, list of contributions to the community and civic-oriented participation of the nominee, letter of agreement from the nominee or their management. So again, this has to be there. If this is not there, then you're disqualified. So again, were John Carpenter and Robert Englund not aware that they were submitted for consideration? Highly unlikely. They were probably very aware that they were considered, that they were being submitted. But of course, they were absolutely surprised and humbled, and as anybody would be, to be chosen, which is really, really cool. But they would, I'm sure, be aware that they were being considered. The committee will select approximately 24 to 30 names for insertion into the walk. Nomination of an individual or group must be approved by the Walk of Fame Selection Committee, sometimes requiring several nominations before a nominee is selected to receive a star. The most qualified artists nominated are eligible for a star to be installed in the walk during the subsequent year. Those not selected for the current year are requested to resubmit for the following nomination period. Should the sponsor not want to make a second attempt, they must notify the Hollywood Chamber immediately for the application to be pulled. So again, who knows how many years that John Carpenter and Robert Englund have been submitted, right? I mean, maybe this wasn't the first year. Maybe Robert Englund and John Carpenter have been submitted many times over the years. And now it's only this year that they were finally chosen. That's possible too. That's possible too. When we go to the frequently asked questions, this will show some interesting stuff. How can I nominate someone for a Walk of Fame star? You can nominate your favorite celebrity with their permission by completing the Walk of Fame nomination dashboard. Who can do the nominating? Anyone, including a fan, can nominate a celebrity as long as the celebrity or his or her management is in agreement with the nomination. If there is no letter of agreement included from the celebrity or his or her management, or representative, I should say, the committee will not accept the application. What is the cost of the Walk of Fame star ceremony? Okay, there you go. So it does include the ceremony. A $75,000 fee after selection. The money is used to pay for the creation and installation of the star, as well as maintenance of the Walk of Fame, price subject to change. And by the way, that's gone up many times over the years. I believe when a fee was first introduced, I think it was in the late 70s or something, and it was like $2,500. And in 2002, I think it was like maybe 10 or 15,000. Now it's 75,000. So you can imagine in another 10 years, it'll probably be $100,000. Can someone who is deceased be nominated? Yes, absolutely. There you go. Can someone who is deceased be nominated for a star immediately? Nope. There has to be a waiting period. That's all about the deceased. Can I nominate someone who doesn't fit in any of the 6 categories? No. The categories do not change, and the nominee must be or have been active in the field of entertainment. How long after someone has been nominated will the ceremony take place? The recipient has up to 2 years to schedule their ceremony. If it is not done within the 2-year period, it will expire, and an application must be resubmitted. Does the committee accept signatures, petitions, or phone calls? The committee does not accept signatures, phone calls, emails, or any form of petitions for a nomination. Only official Walk of Fame applications are accepted. And there you go. Who are the members of the Walk of Fame Selection Committee? Each of the 6 categories is represented by someone with expertise in that field. Who that is, I don't know. How often are stars voted in? Stars are voted in once a year in June. An average of 24 to 30 stars are selected per year. If a nominee isn't selected during the voting process, do I have to resubmit the application for the following year? And blah, 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 blah. So it just goes on there. So fascinating. I find this stuff really interesting. And when you read a bit deeper into the Hollywood Walk of Fame and where it began and the reasons why it was created back in the 50s, to sort of spruce up the area and to bring tourism down there into kind of where it is now, there are a lot of Hollywood stars that have spoken out about it. Famously, supposedly Al Pacino, that is like, I'm not fucking paying for that shit. You know what I mean? There's a lot of people that, it's not that certain people wouldn't be deserving of it, but there's a lot of marketing. There's a lot of, there's a lot of promotion around it. There's a lot of stars that I think are given to certain people that, are questionable. And as I've said here today, are John Carpenter and Robert Englund, do they deserve, in the old school sense, right? In the old school sense, do they deserve a star on the Walk of Fame? Yes. The short answer is yes. Again, I think there's nuance in there. I think if it wasn't for Freddy and certainly wasn't for Halloween, you probably could make an argument to say no, right? So again, there's a bit of nuance in there, but certainly, it is what it is. Freddy Krueger, Halloween, the influence that both of these men have had on their respective genres is unmistakable. It's incredible. They're legends. And so because of that, yes, the short answer is yes, absolutely. But there are a lot of people that get their stars where I'm like, what? Like I remember, what was it, 10 years ago or something? And no disrespect to him, but what's his face? Franco. What's his first name? I forget his first name now. I'm drawing a blank. He got a star on the Walk of Fame. And I remember thinking, what? Really? James Franco. That's it. I'm like, James Franco is getting a star on the Walk of Fame? He's a great actor and he's been in some stuff. But when I think of Hollywood Walk of Fame, I think fucking legends. I think legends. Absolute when you are walking along that, and you see Harrison Ford and you see, Robert De Niro and like legends. I don't want to suddenly come across, I don't know, like, I'm just trying to think of somebody that's, hot right now, but hasn't, I don't know, but you know what I mean, right? And there's certain people, like I remember when Britney Spears got her star on the Walk of Fame in 2002 or 3. She'd been hot for like 3 or 4 years. And I remember thinking, whoa. Yes, she's I don't mean hot as in attractive. I mean hot as in demand. Yeah, she's in demand right now. She's hot. She's the pop print. She's oops, I did it again. But yeah, I remember I was an early 20-something kid. I was like, she's hot. And I remember it. But I also remember when it was announced that she was getting her star on the Walk of Fame, I remember thinking, whoa, hang on a sec here. Like, let's wait a bit because she could come and go and that's it. Or have a gigantic tank of a career. And then it's like, you know what I mean? But it's not for that, right? She's hot right now. They want to capitalize on it. It's about money. It's about promotion. It's about marketing. It's about that stuff really plays into it heavily. And that's the kind of thing where I'm like, I get it. I get it. It's modern. It's not old school anymore. Like when you walk along the men's, I don't know if it's called Man's Chinese Theater or anyways, the Chinese Theater on Hollywood Boulevard, and you look at the footprints and the handprints and you see like, Jimmy Stewart and Clark Gable, and Harrison Ford. And oh my God, you see like legends of the golden age, like from the 30s and the 40s. And, you see like just Charlie Chaplin and all this stuff. And then you see like, I don't know, somebody that you're just like, really? it doesn't feel as prestigious anymore. And that's largely because you have legends on there, bona fide legends, that deserved to have that kind of recognition. But then it's a mixed bag of like people that are like, who's that? Oh yeah, them. Yeah, they were, yeah. What happened to them anyway? You know what I'm saying? Like they're mixed in, with it too. And so I've always had this kind of, do you know what I mean? I've always kind of had this kind of feeling about it, that feels kind of, so it's just how I feel. It's just how I feel. So but yes, the point of the show today was just to kind of, talk about it, but also, inform people kind of how it works and how a lot of these things work. Again, simply because, and it's not that I know everything. I don't know everything. I'm still learning all the time, but I do see a lot of people online in movie spheres and comments, and you could say to me, well, how do you know they don't know that, or whatever the case is? And it's because of how they are arguing something, or their arguments for something, or their arguments against something. It becomes very clear that they're not informed on how the process works. It's like Rotten Tomatoes, right? Again, a different sphere, but the principles are the same. There's people that really don't understand that score on Rotten Tomatoes, like there's no nuance there. All that score, it's an aggregate. All it is just, I could like a movie, but give it a poor score. You know what I mean? Because, there's no nuance, right? I've read reviews that have been seemingly positive, but are like 6 out of 10 or whatever it is. And therefore it's not it doesn't register in there's so much, like you have to actually read the reviews, not just look at the score. You could have a movie, and this is true. You could have a movie on Rotten Tomatoes that has like, let's say 58%, right? So if it has 58%, it's got a green splat. Okay. But if all you do is look at that 58% and you don't bother to read any of the reviews to understand, now, mind you, I'm also the first person to say that a large majority of these, who gets approved for Rotten Tomatoes certification is just ridiculous. There are people that know how to critique a film and understand filmmaking, and then there are those that just have no idea what they're talking about. But anyway, I digress. But you can have a 58% on Rotten Tomatoes with a there, and when you read the reviews, you go, well, actually, these negative reviews aren't that bad. Like there's some issues that some of these people had with it, but if like 5 of these reviews suddenly leaned positive, then all of a sudden that score would be like 68%. Like, and then sometimes you read people saying, you know what, I actually didn't mind. I thought it was okay, but I didn't like this, I didn't like that. And that was really kind of the only reason why I gave it a negative. Do you know what I'm saying? And that's the problem with headline fandom, right? That's why I always say, go in and read, go in and look. What are people saying? Because you'll be surprised to know that a lot of the times you'll see negative reviews that are actually not that bad. It just ultimately didn't win them over. So they had to kind of, they had to say, oh, well, I didn't enjoy it the way I wanted to, so I gave it this. But you look at all the things they did, that happens, right? But in the headline sort of, mentality of the world we live in, that's not how people operate. That's not how people work. They just look at the score, right? They look at the score. You can give something a positive review. I can give a movie an 8 out of 10, but my review is largely unfavorable, right? That can happen too, and does happen. And so, I include that, the Rotten Tomatoes phenomenon, in sort of the realm of I wish more fans would educate themselves on how things work. And I don't mean going out and getting your PhD in film studies. I just mean, doing a bit of research, doing a bit of reading about how does that work? Like I said at the top of the show, when people are dumbfounded why a movie doesn't get nominated for an Oscar, how could they? It's totally a snub. The Academy snubbed that person. Maybe that person wasn't submitted and it had nothing to do with the Academy, right? Maybe the studio snubbed them. Maybe Pearl wasn't submitted, and it wasn't the Academy that snubbed Pearl, and it wasn't the Academy that snubbed Mia Goth. Maybe it was A24, right? That's what I mean, is that there's a submission process, and there's millions of dollars that go around in this business for submissions and even just to get considered. And then there's millions of dollars that are spent on marketing campaigns and Oscar campaigns. And if the studio doesn't submit their film for Oscar consideration, that movie, the Academy can't, it can't get nominated because it wasn't submitted. Right? If I don't submit, or if my agent doesn't submit my work to the Voice Arts Awards or to the Emmys or, wherever, then I'm not going to get nominated. They're not just going to call me and go, hey man, hey, Dave McRae, what's going on, Dave? Yeah, we heard about you. We love you. Hey, listen, we think you're so awesome and so cool. We'd like to just nominate you for best national TV promo. Yeah. No. We're coming to you, baby. We're coming to you. That's not how it works. That's not how any of these award shows work. All these award shows, the movies, whether it's Emmys, whether it's, they've been submitted, right? Their work, the titles, the actors have all been submitted. And if they don't get submitted, then, so just keep that in mind. When Oscar season rolls around again and you feel something, oh my God, there was no nominations for that. The first thought should be, I wonder if the studio submitted them for consideration. Let's say there's a horror movie called, Killer Chains. It's called Killer Chains, right? And it's amazing. It's fucking amazing, right? And it was released by Paramount, Or let's take that out of it. Let's take Smile 2. Smile 2 is coming out this year. Right? Let's make one so you can identify with it. Let's say Smile 2 is fucking amazing. I mean incredible. It is people are buzzing about it. Holy shit. It's amazing. Let's just say it is for the sake of argument. It's released from Paramount, right? It's released by Paramount, I should say. Okay. Oscar season rolls around. Smile is shut out. No Smile anywhere. Well, your first thought should be, did Paramount submit? Did Paramount submit Smile? That should be your first. Now, maybe they did, but that should be your first thought. Your first thought, your first thought should never be, oh, the Academy can't give a nomination if the film isn't submitted, if there is no film to give a nomination to. Anyway, I beat this dead horse into a thing, but I see it every year, and there could be reasons why a studio, like I said, may not submit. Look, the vast majority of the time, horror movies are not very good. And the vast majority of the time, horror movies are not Oscar contenders. Or if a studio is going to spend millions of dollars between submission fees and marketing campaigns and Oscar campaigns for their movie, what would you do as a business person? What would you do? You would pick the movie that gives you the best probability of success. Right? And all the buzz last year was Everything Everywhere All at Once. So I would assume, I'm just assuming, that A24 put all their chips into Everything Everywhere All at Once. And Pearl just wasn't on their radar. Now, maybe they did submit Pearl, I don't know. But I'm just simply saying that it's important we remember that. So there's these little nuances and these things that a lot of fans don't realize. They think the Academy is like a board of 10 people that get together every year over beer and chips and campfire and just go through a list and pick movies they want to nominate or something. That's not it. That's not how any of these award shows work, right? So, and the Walk of Fame is no different. Right? The Walk of Fame is no different. So it's not like there's a board that they just go, hey, let's pick. No, Robert Englund and John Carpenter and everybody else were submitted. And this year, the argument, if they were submitted, I don't know, maybe Maybe it was the first time they were submitted. Maybe they've been submitted in the past. I'm not entirely sure. But for whatever reason, they were chosen this year, and the criteria and the argument was solid and sound enough that the Hollywood Chamber of Commerce says, yes, we're going to give you that honor. But you also have to pay $75,000. Oh, okay, all right, let's $75,000. So, do you buy your star on the Walk of Fame? Yeah, you kind of buy your star on the Walk of Fame, but you also buy Oscars as well, and you buy, you know what I mean? I mean, it's these things are not free. It is how these things work in a lot of ways, and so, anyways, I just wanted to get that out there. I find it interesting as somebody that's been nominated for 4 Voice Arts Awards in my life and has attended 3 of the 4 award shows. The second time I was nominated, I could not attend, but I've attended 3 of the 4 award shows. It was a very interesting experience. And the whole thing, not just being there on the red carpet, Sigourney Weaver was down, or actually she was behind me. Rosario Dawson was on the red carpet. I was on the red carpet. It was like, what the hell am I doing on the red carpet? But it was really, really cool. And the whole, it's to peek behind the curtain and see how those Hollywood award shows work and how it's done and how it kind of goes, I find it interesting. And so I always feel that when I see these things and I see people talking and that kind of stuff, I'm always like, that's not exactly like, there's things you're not thinking about or are aware of, right? It would be like saying, hey, Dave, how come you haven't gotten another Voice Arts nomination since your last one in 2019? Because I or my agent haven't submitted. That's why. Because I haven't felt, me personally as an artist, that there's been work that I want to submit. Like if I'm going to submit for the Emmys or the Voice Arts Awards or whatever the case is, I want to have something that I feel is going to give me the best probability of success. And so do my agents, right? And the 4 times that we have submitted my work, I have been nominated all 4 times. And I was nominated in 2019 for Outstanding Body of Work. That was pretty amazing. I guess I could submit that again. But so, it's that kind of thing, right? I haven't been snubbed by the Voice Arts Awards for the last 5 years. The Voice Arts Awards have not snubbed me. Okay. I haven't submitted to be snubbed. Now, if studios submit and the film and the actors are not chosen, okay, that's a bit of a different thing. But then you also have to look, well, who else was submitted, right? Maybe Robert Englund and John Carpenter have been submitted for the Walk of Fame 10 times over the last 20 years, right? Maybe they have, I don't know. But every year they were submitted, there were just many others, or maybe not many others, but maybe there were just many others that were just more deserving. When you look at their entire filmography, when you look at their entire career, they go, hey, listen, I'm sorry. I mean, Robert Englund's great, but I mean, we have to give it to this individual. I mean, this is fucking, you know what I'm saying? That can happen too. So, again, the snubbing thing there's a lot of nuance to it. 9 times out of 10, when the average movie fan thinks something is a snub, I never agree with it. I'm like, yeah, that's not a snub. Because there's so many other variables at play. Just because you think that person should have been nominated or won doesn't make it a snub. Who else was nominated? What was the competition? What were they up against? And were they submitted at all? So anyway, I digress, but I just wanted to hammer that home so that you're more informed, so that when you see these things, when you see those discussions or announcements, you can kind of go, oh, cool. I wonder if you have a bit of a different perspective, because I have a different perspective now. I mean, when I began to, I didn't really know. I mean, I kind of had a vague idea of how award shows worked, but when I submitted for my first in 2015, I really learned quickly how award shows worked. I was like, oh, I got to pay for my submission. There's a fee here. Oh, that's kind of, and then I learned, oh, the Oscars, you do that too. And the Emmys, you do that. And the Grammys, you do. And it's all, okay, cool. I didn't, and that's, like, I learned a lot going through that very first nomination. And I just find it really interesting. And there's a lot of people that poo-poo it. There's a lot of people that scoff at it, poo-poo award shows, that they feel it's just a circle jerk and the fees are too high and it's all that kind of stuff. And it's just celebrities patting themselves on the back. And there's all that part of it as well. And I can tell you, having been to 3 out of the 4 shows, I saw it, I saw all the ego and the, all that kind of stuff too. And it's a real fascinating experience. And so, anyway, Robert Englund, John Carpenter absolutely deserve their star on the Walk of Fame in the old school kind of way. The old school kind of way, not the new school kind of way when really it's all about promotion and marketing and, who's hot right now and all that kind of stuff. And it's like, hang on a sec here. When you really think of people who deserve it, when you think of their impact and the era for which they come from, I think that's incredible. It's also why I hope that somebody like Harrison Ford finally gets an honorary Oscar. He doesn't have an Oscar. He doesn't have an Oscar. He was nominated in 2015, in 1985, for Witness. Never been nominated again. Didn't win. But he's such a legendary status, such a legendary actor, one of the last great movie stars of all time, that I really hope he's given an honorary Oscar. I think would be cool. But anyways, folks, let's jump over to the chat room and see what all of you are saying now. If you're watching after the fact, jump into the comment section and let me know your thoughts on Robert Englund and John Carpenter getting a nomination, or not getting a nomination, getting the actual win, quote unquote. They will get their stars on the Hollywood Walk of Fame in 2025. Absolutely cool. Absolutely cool indeed. So let me see here. Let me get these super chats that came in. I know there was a super chat that came in as well from the other stream that conked out on me. So let me just hang on. Let me go to I want to see if I can get that. Let me see if I can get it. Hang on a sec here. Okay, let me see. So Fans of Something sent in $2, says, let's try this again. Dave, you winning tomorrow? I don't know. We'll see. Thank you very much, Eddie. Appreciate that. Josh McKenna. Oh no, the other one didn't show up. I thought there was a $6 one. It's not showing up yet. It may show up. I thought there was a $6 one. Josh McKenna sends in $9.99, says, I might have an unpopular opinion that I'm not afraid to share. Abigail is my favorite film from the Radio Silence guys. I prefer Abigail over Scream. Do you have a favorite Radio Silence movie? I don't, Josh, but I really did enjoy Abigail. I really thought it was terrific. I really did. There was a super chat that came in on the other stream. My apologies. It's not showing up in my supers. I will make sure to check for it a bit later. Robert Kitzmiller sends in a generous super chat of $20. Thank you, Robert. And says, here in Palm Springs, California, they have a Walk of Stars downtown with some iconic names. Elvis, Marilyn, Sinatra, etc. Celebrities used to come here back in the day from LA as a vacation retreat. P.S. since has kind of gone to shit. Palm Springs, you're saying? Yeah, I've never been. Look, there's lots of Walk of Fames around the world. There's a Canadian Walk of Fame here in Toronto with a lot of prestigious Canadians, your Jim Carreys and your Dan Aykroyds and your Martin Shorts and William Shatner, Michael J. Fox, you name it, they're on there. I mean, the Walk of Fame is like, at face value, the Walk of Fame is cool. But I don't know. I feel bad saying this, but I only say it because I when I read comments or I see people arguing with each other over things on film Twitter, as they'll say, there's a lot of things I see that I'm just like, that's just not true. There's people that are factually incorrect on this, you know, and so sometimes, not that my channel is big enough to make any sort of impact. I mean, there's only 66 people watching right now, but then again, I think the Wham guys are live, so people would rather go watch Wham than hear me talk about, you know, boring Walk of Fame stuff. I totally get it. But I got to talk about what I'm passionate about, right? I mean, this is the stuff I'm passionate about. And there's only so many Halloween shows I can do. So I have to talk about things I'm passionate about. And one of those things is informing people and trying to do it in a way that doesn't appear condescending or pretentious. I certainly don't mean to come off that way if it does to some. I don't think I'm, you know, coming off that way. But I like to inform people so that they're more educated, or maybe they have their own YouTube channel, or maybe they have their own, you know, whatever the case is, and they themselves can talk about this. Or I just feel that, look, if you're going to argue movies online, if you're going to write about movies online, and a lot of people do know this shit too, but if you're going to write about things, argue about things, if you have your own YouTube channel where you discuss movies and you want to discuss movies beyond the threat, you know, beyond the threshold of just fandom, and you want to talk about like how movies are made and, you know, what things mean when, you know, the studio says this or the studio says that. If you want to dive into that area, you better know your fucking shit. You don't have to know everything, okay? But you better know your shit. You better know, at least have a basic understanding of how things work. Because if you don't, you're just going to be spitballing and fucking, I was going to say shitting out of your ass, but you do shit out of your ass. But I mean, like, you know, you'll just be kind of, take my glasses off here. You'll be speaking out of your ass. And there's been, you know, over the years I've been doing this, there have been a few channels that I've seen that have mentioned things that I'm like, that's not how that works. There's been some channels I've even seen dab a little bit, mention something about voiceover or, you know, voice actors, or how, you know, voice actors get paid, or how that does that, or why the voice, whatever the case is. And I'm like, that's not how it works, you know, and they're saying it with such confidence and such, you know, and I'm just like, that's not how it works at all. You know, and so if you want to get online and you want to come across as informed, and again, I don't pretend to know everything. There's probably a few things I've gotten wrong over the years too. But I always do my best to stay within my lane. And if there's something I don't know, I will do my best to preface it by saying to you guys, well, I'm not 100% sure, but based on what I do know, this is a likely scenario, that it could be this, or it could be that, or it could be this. Because it's so important to be informed. There's a difference between having an opinion and an informed opinion, right? And informed opinions are not coming from a place of being emotional, right? They're coming from a place of being informed, facts, objective facts. And very few people shoot from the hip in that regard, right? Because fandom is all about raw, you know, like these people losing their shit over the leaked Superman, you know, photos is just wild to me. Maybe it shouldn't be wild, because we live in a day and age now where, you know, that is just what online fandom, you know, discourse is. When I look at the leaked photos of David Cornsweet in the Superman uniform, I'm like, looks fine. But I know what I'm looking at. I'm looking at a paparazzi, not an official promo photo. I'm looking at somebody on their fucking iPhone, you know, some probably guy named Bob Rickerocker, you know, on his iPhone, who's sneaking over the wall, kind of, you know, I mean, the fucking, you know, horizon line is all off, and he's just kind of there, and there's like a tree in the way, and he's like, you know, like, look at what you're looking at. You know, it's not an official photo under studio lighting. It's not the movie where everything's color graded and the shots are crafted. You know what I mean? And the presentation is slick and stylish. And it's James Gunn, for fuck's sake. You think he's going to look like that in the movie? You know what I mean? But it blows my mind how many people look at that and go, oh, well, that's just shit. That's just what it's going to look like. That's what it's going to look like. Shit. And I think it looks fine, but people are like, "Oh, look, it looks, you know, they're analyzing the the flap and they don't think it's tight enough, or maybe it's too loose, but then maybe it's too tight. The underwear is too big. It's not big enough. And I'm just like, fucking wait. Do you like the color? Great. Do you like that it's old school Superman? In terms of the look and that kind of, great. You're looking at a fucking paparazzi shot from Bob. Relax. I could show you 30 BTS shots of Michael Myers that looks like dog shit. And then you look at him in the movie and you're like, oh, it's not that bad. Yeah, because look at how many BTS shots we can bring up of the original OG Michael Myers mask, right? I mean, there's countless, not countless, but there's a few pictures of Nick Castle behind the scenes with that mask. It doesn't look like anything special at all. Doesn't look like anything special at all. It's because he's standing out in the California sun, and he's just holding the mask and he's off to the side and he's just he's not, you know what I mean? Like, God, wait, calm the fuck down. And when I speak like that, some people take that as condescending and pretentious. And it's like, no, it's just somebody that knows what they're looking at and somebody that knows what they're not looking at. I'm not looking at an official, I'm looking at David Cornsweet under the California sun, standing unevenly on like he's got his 1 foot up. He's looking like this. He's kind of, he's doing this. He's in mid-sentence speaking. His arm is up like this. There's a crew member kind of, cutting off his shoulder. And, it's like, fuck, like what? Shit, it's dog shit. It's over. Henry Cavill. It's like, calm the fuck down. I don't know if it's because I say this, and this might, are they children? Is this who is doing this online? Little children? Because you would think that somebody would be like, yeah, it's not even official BTS. It's paparazzi shit. It's like, I don't know. It's like paparazzi getting a shot of, I don't know, somebody who's gorgeous. Let's say somebody like, I don't know, Sydney Sweeney or something, coming out of a fucking Kmart. I don't even know if Kmart's around. And it's like, hey, there's Sydney Sweeney. And she's like got a hat on with her, no makeup. Oh, Sydney Sweeney. She looks like shit. Well, yeah. Of course. I'm like, guys, I'm like, look, you can analyze the suit. You can discuss the suit. You can look at it and be like, but just don't forget what you're looking at. Don't forget what you're looking at. Do you know what I mean? A lot of things that look amazing in the movies don't look that amazing in real life. Do you know what I mean? They don't. There's a magic to the movies. There's a magic to the way things are shot, the way the lighting is crafted, the way the films are color graded, the angles that they choose, the lenses that they choose, right? There's a whole story and a whole presentation of sheen and polish and style and substance and pizzazz. You know what I'm saying? And music. There's music in there. I don't know if they're going to have the original theme, but you know what I mean? Da, 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 da. You know what I'm saying? There's a whole presentation. There's sound design and sound mixing, and there's a whole presentation. Looking at the Superman suit from Bob Rickerknocker climbing over a wall, taking a shot with a crew member in there and David Cornsweet mid-sentence, like, relax. Holy shit. Oh, anyway. I can hear it now. You're a condescending piece of shit. Well, the only person that would take what I'm saying like that are the people that do that. Are the people that are losing their mind. Now, again, that doesn't mean you can't get a sense of something, but I look at that and I'm like, yeah, it looks cool. It's the old colors. He looks like old school Superman. Cool. He looks like Superman. Cool. I'll wait and see what it looks like in the movie. And then if the movie's shit or the suit looks like crap in the movie, well then, okay. Jesus Christ, man. Unreal. I don't understand it. I don't understand. Do you remember, I don't know if you remember this, during the Halloween lead up, there were a few people, not a few people, there were quite a few people that were like, oh, I don't know about The Mask, fuck, not gonna. And then now The Mask became one of the best things about the trilogy. You know what I mean? It's insane. Alex Shambach sends in a member chat. Thanks, buddy. Says, most people would not recognize their names. That being said, Hollywood has constantly underappreciated horror, thus producing less A-list names within the genre. I'm happy to see them there. Yeah, well, and that is true. Hollywood, when you say Hollywood, again, we have to remember that, films and actors can only be nominated if they are submitted. So we first have to, and there's no way of knowing this really, I don't think, but yes, at face value, you are correct. However, I also like to say that with all due respect to the horror genre, and it's my favorite genre, most horror movies are not Oscar-worthy contenders. They're just not. When you look at the horror movies of the world, right? They're not Oscar-worthy. They're not the best of the best. They may be the best in that genre, but most horror movies, there's a different level that a horror movie has to go. A horror movie, one of the reasons why horror movies are generally not nominated, okay? Keep this in mind, is because generally speaking, I'm speaking generally here, horror movies, like when you think of, your slashers and your supernatural movies and your paranormal movies, they are targeted to a demographic and a type of fan that is only interested in those kinds of movies, right? So maybe that's not the right way to say it. It doesn't have broad appeal, right? The reason why you will see a lot of dramas nominated is because, yes, that is where a lot of intense acting can be portrayed and storytelling, but there's a lot of layers and a lot of symbolism and a lot of deeper sort of broader reach that stories within the drama genre have, right? Stories about the human condition, about the human spirit, about never giving up, about love and compassion and fear, not in a horror movie way, but that fear of life and commitment and there's just so, there's so many human spirit wonderful stories in the drama category across many different there's many different ways to tell it, right? And so where the horror movies that do get nominated, like Get Out or The Exorcist, generally have to cross the threshold of their own genre. And most horror movies don't cross the threshold of their own genre. They can be classics within their genre, and they can be beloved within their genre. But generally speaking, for a film to really get nominated, or for a studio to want to submit for a nomination, they have to look at the horror movie they have and go, oh my God, this is getting hype from everybody. This is getting hype from everywhere. This is getting this is not just a great horror movie. This is a great movie, right? No matter the genre. It's the best of the best. And so generally speaking, most horror movies don't surpass the threshold of their own genre in terms of broad appeal, like zeitgeist sort of, oh my God, what a film. It's scary and it's this and it's that, but wow, what an amazing film. And most horror movies don't do that. And so, and is there a stigma around it? Well, yeah, there's a stigma around horror movies because most horror movies, when you look at the pantheon of horror films, like when you look at the genre as a whole, most horror movies don't fall into anywhere near that sort of potential. And so does Hollywood hate horror movies? No. Because when you say Hollywood hates horror movies, what are you talking about? Define Hollywood. Like, what do you mean? Well, the Academy. Well, define the Academy. Again, the Academy is not a group of 10 people sitting on a board picking movies every year. That's not how it works, right? So I think generally speaking, just by nature of the genre, nature of the kind of genre it is, it will always have broad appeal in the sense of, people like to be scared, but there are a lot of people that don't like to be either. It will always have that niche sort of feel, or that niche kind of appeal, I should say. But I don't know if horror, generally, like in an overall thing, horror will ever have, populace appeal. I don't think it will. There's a lot of people out there that don't watch horror movies because they don't like to be scared. You may have dated some of them. There's a lot of women that don't like to watch horror movies, but they'll watch a comedy and a drama and an action movie, no problem, right? Horror is very niche, and it's terrific. It's my favorite genre, and I think it definitely deserves it. Absolutely, like when we look at certain horror movies within the genre, there are horror movies that deserve so much recognition for their layers, for their symbolism, for their cinematic language. I mean, there are beautifully made horror films out there, but there is a stigma around it. And it's like fan films, right? Look what we've done for the fan film subgenre, I guess, and what Vincent DeSanti has done, with his Never Hike Alone films. I mean, Dylan's New Nightmare. I mean, when you look at what we as filmmakers have done, I mean, they're real movies, right? They're not, I mean, they're fan films because we don't own the intellectual property, but when you look at what we've done, they're real indie films made by professional filmmakers and professional actors, and which is why they look the way they look, the sound the way they do. And so, but there is still a stigma around fan film, right? And there is a stigma around horror, because there was a time when horror was, especially in the 70s, it was not well respected. It was seen as exploitative. And there was sort of a criteria, boobs and sex and exploitation. And it was, for all intents and purposes, it was a step below, or a step, or just below porn. I mean, it kind of had that stigma, and the exploitative splatter sexualized movies of the 70s didn't do it any favors. But there's a lot of nuance there too, right? Horror is a very diverse genre with a lot of different sub-genres within the overall arching genre of horror. And so I hope you understand, I am agreeing with you. But again, it's a very nuanced discussion, because I don't think it can be just labeled as Hollywood hates horror, or Hollywood. It's like, well, there's a stigma around it. And I think that more horror filmmakers have to do a better job at showing the world that horror is something that can be taken seriously, is something that can be respected and appreciated, and something that can be nominated and win Best Picture. Will that ever happen? I don't know. But certainly I think there's a possibility of it now, more now today than there ever has been at any other time. But it's interesting. It's definitely interesting. I think, but there's a lot of stigma that the horror genre has that it has to overcome. Not dilute what horror is, not go against its own, ethics of what horror is, but understand that there's a stigma that has to be overcome here. We have to be able to show what horror can be and can be nominated alongside, Oppenheimer. You know what I mean? We have to be able to show that we can do that. But it's an uphill climb. Josh McKenna, $9.99 says, I remember you saying Psycho was the first movie which showed a toilet flush. North American film, I believe. I'm not sure if it was the first movie ever, but can you imagine people from 1960 watching a Sydney Sweeney movie and how they would react? Oh my God. Yeah. I mean, it would be, that right there goes to show you how far we've come. So, I mean, Very different. Very, very different. And yeah, I think, I would like to see the horror genre, and there's a lot of different subgenres within horror as well. You don't really get that with any other genre. The horror genre, there's horror as a genre, and then there's like 50 subgenres, supernatural and slasher and paranormal and found footage and possession. And I mean, it just goes on and on. And so, and because horror movies are also the easiest to make, it's where a lot of filmmakers, myself included, begin, because it's, you cut your teeth on it because you make them cheaply, relatively speaking. And there's just I don't want the horror genre to change its identity, but there's reasons why horror movies generally don't get nominated. And it's not just because Hollywood has, there's a stigma. It's also because there's a lot of horror movies that just aren't Oscar worthy, just the reality, folks. Robert Kitzmiller, $5. Thanks, Robert. Says, I've always held an actor getting a star in the same regard as an athlete getting into the Hall of Fame. Now you fart in a jar and are eligible. Yeah. Well, that's, I mean, if that were the case, it's not like that. If that were the case, then the Hollywood Walk of Fame would have an age, right? They would have to have actors prove longevity, and in that longevity, prove gigantic success and relevancy, right? So somebody like a Harrison Ford, he's a first ballot, right? Somebody like Britney Spears, maybe she does get into the Hall of Fame, but I don't think she's a first ballot necessarily, right? James Franco has a star on the Walk of Fame. Why? I don't think James Franco, this is my opinion, but when I think of legends of Hollywood, no disrespect to James Franco, I don't see him as a legend. Again, I'm not somebody that loosely tosses that word around, right? That word should be reserved for true legends. There's a lot of great football players. There's a lot of great hockey players, great baseball players. But not all great players get into the Hall of Fame. You have to be not great, you have to be incredible. It's like, I remember what Bob Bergen, the voice of Porky Pig, said one time talking about voiceover demos, right? He said, your voiceover demo can't be great. It has to be brilliant. It can't be good. It can't be, that's pretty good. It has to be brilliant, because the competition is fierce. And if you want to be represented by some of the biggest agents in the world and you submit your voiceover demo to them, it has to be brilliant. Not just pretty good or great, brilliant. Right? And it's true. These are the hard knocks of show business. I mean, this is the reality. And so when I look at James Franco, yeah, he's great. He's been in some good movies, been in some big movies. Hollywood Walk of Fame? What? Okay. Sure. You know what I'm saying? And of course, that's not why it's done that way, right? As you can see, you know what I mean? There's a promotional aspect to it. There's a marketing aspect to it. And so no, but I agree with you. Like, in a perfect world, I agree with you 100%. If it was really virtuous and, they just called up and there was a table where they just picked people deserving of it, then yeah, you would, yeah, for sure. You would wait until the actor is, say, maybe had 25 films under their belt, or maybe they've proven a certain level of, there would have to be a measuring stick, right? There would have to be like maybe box office success. There would have to be, pop culture success. There would have to be, there would have to be certain things, right? And then they'd have to measure that against others and all that. And they go, wow, this person is deserving of a star on the Walk of Fame because of this and this and this and this and this. But that's not how it is. And you could have like, you could be really hot for maybe a couple of years and potentially get a star on the Walk of Fame. And it's like, fuck, man. And unless something has changed that I don't know about, I just am like, no, come on. So it feels deserving for Robert and John Carpenter because they're old. Because it feels like, like they have the history, they have there it is, so, but yeah, it's not the same. Yeah. Again, and please understand, if you're watching live, if you're watching after the fact, I'm not poo-pooing on this. I'm not trying to be a Debbie Downer. I just like to give people a little dose of reality on how things work. That's all. And I don't pretend to be the world's foremost expert. I've just learned a lot over the years, having gone through 4 award shows myself. And I found it interesting. I was like, oh, I didn't know that. Oh, I mean, like I said, the first time I was nominated, I was like, oh, I have to pay for that? Oh, okay. I was like, okay, oh, sure, yeah. And I was like, oh, that's how it works? Oh, and then I did a bit of research, like, oh, that's how the Oscars work. Oh, you know what I mean? And I like knowing that stuff. I don't know. I mean, when do you ever bust it out unless you're here on the channel? But I like knowing that stuff. It's the same thing where I try to learn about the business side of show business when it comes to movies and things like that and studios. And, I will tend to lean on others who are in the business, who know a little bit more about maybe that side of the business than I do, to get them to teach me some things. I'm like, okay, now I'm armed with that. You know what I mean? It's just, I think if you're going to be online talking movies, especially, look, there are some people that they go online, they talk movies, they just talk about movies and what they like, what they don't like, fandom stuff, and they keep it very one-dimensional, very innocent. But I like to dive into the nitty-gritty, and I like to really kind of, because I find I'm not just a fan, I'm a filmmaker, right? I'm not just a fan, I'm a professional voice actor, so I'm always going to do shows on this channel that are from a fandom perspective. I can get lost in the fandom and get crazy and talk about it for sure. But when something pops up that I see that I'm like, oh, I want to I want to dive into that and talk about it, even though I know it's not going to get the most views, even though I know it's not going to get the most people watching live, I want to talk about it because it interests me, and hopefully it'll inform some others out there. And, so yeah, always keep that in mind. When you hear people get nominated for something, understand that it's not out of the blue. It's not like Robert Englund and John Carpenter had no idea that this was potentially coming. Like I said, in order to be nominated, or not nominated, in order to receive a star on the Walk of Fame, there has to be approval from the management team or the actor or performer themselves. So Robert Englund and John Carpenter knew this may happen, right? So it's not just they got a call one day and we're like, oh, fuck, hey, and that's not me poo-pooing it. It's me just saying this is how it works. I guess it takes a bit of the Hollywood out of it. I think there's this mystique, right, that is created. There's this mystique that is, that is there with Hollywood, and not as much as there used to be before the internet and social media, but there is still kind of a Hollywood mystique. And the average movie fan that's not watching my show or not like neck deep in, I'm talking about the average movie fan, like your friend down the street who's just taking their kids to T-ball and like, you know what I mean? The average movie fan, has no interest in this, has no idea about this, and maybe there's still a level of mystique for them. But certainly the mystique of Hollywood has gone away. But there's still a level of mystique that's there where a lot of fans still think that, there's this place called the Academy that just, sits down one day with a cigar and a bag of chips and just decides to go through all the movies released that year and pick out the best ones. And it's like, that's not how it works, Because people like to say, the Academy this, what do you mean? The Academy is like 15,000 people. Like, who are you talking about? Do you know what I mean? And it's only I don't want to go into that. I'm going to be going on a tangent here. It's its own show. I was going to talk about how, directors vote for directors, actors vote on it, and then everybody votes for best picture. The whole thing. You got to learn about that kind of stuff. Brush up on it. Learn how it works. It really makes you see award season, award shows through a bit of a different lens. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's a bit of a different kind of, I know it takes a bit of the mystique out of it, and a bit of the fun maybe out of it. But, I think especially if you're in a position where you're going to talk about movies online, you have your own YouTube channel where you're going to start talking about all this stuff, you got to be informed. You do. Otherwise, you're just talking out of your ass. Robert Kitzmiller, $5. Thanks, buddy. Says, no. I got that one. Let me get some non-super ones here. Brandon Collins says, most movies in general aren't Oscar worthy. Here. I see no reason to discriminate based on genre. Just because it's drama doesn't mean it's good. That's true. The Exorcist is better than 99% of films ever made. I could not agree with you more. But The Exorcist, though, in fairness, I agree with everything you've said, by the way. But in fairness, it's important to remember, too, that The Exorcist is a horror drama. There's a lot of drama. It's a character-driven film with a strong horror aspect to it. The Exorcist is not, it's not Friday the 13th, right? It is, if the term existed then, The Exorcist would be elevated. It's got a maturity to it. It's about character. It's about... it's a character-driven film. Jaws is a character-driven film. And so when you look at, those movies and you look at when you look at the great horror movies that have been nominated, they tend to be, although there might be some examples that maybe aren't, but when you look at The Exorcist or Jaws, there's a strong dramatic component to those stories. You know what I mean? They are character-driven films. And so if you could create a character-driven film that is scary and frightening and with great mood and atmosphere, all that kind of stuff, then your chances, I think, immediately go up that whoever you're doing it for, whoever the production company is, maybe you're a little indie film and you haven't played the festival circuit and you got to submit yourself. I don't know. But if you've been picked up by a distributor and it only helps your chances on being submitted for consideration, right? You know what I mean? I mean, Friday the 13th ain't gonna, unless it's like, but like Friday the 13th part 6 ain't nobody's submitting that shit. And I'm not saying the movie shit. I'm just saying you look at it, you go, yeah, this is not like, because it costs a lot of money to submit. It costs a lot of money to build a campaign. And as I said at the top of the show, studios, if they're going to submit their movies for Oscar consideration, they want to spend money on the movies that are going to give them the best probability of success, right? Because otherwise it's a waste of money. Jeff Harris sends in $4.99. Thank you, Jeff. And says, hey, Dave, I don't know if anyone asked, but did you see the Nosferatu trailer? I did. And I did. And I really liked it. I thought it was pretty cool. So I got to watch it again, though, to kind of really get my assessment on it. But I did, and I liked it. And I'm looking forward to when it comes out. Robert Kitzmiller sends in $10. Thanks, buddy. Says, Megalopolis is giving Inception vibes. Can Francis Ford Coppola cross $1 billion with this? I like films that test the mind and theories of human understanding. Rob, unfortunately, probably not, because I hear, although I haven't seen it, and I reserve full judgment from my own opinion, but I hear it is as Donald Trump would say, a total disaster. Total disaster. It's absolutely a total disaster. It's a disaster. I hear it's garbage. It got absolutely devastated at Cannes, and I hear it's dog shit. However, so I don't think it has any hope in hell on crossing $1 billion at the box office. There's no way. I think it will be lucky to make a couple $100 million, maybe even $100 million. However, who knows? Maybe it's not as bad as what Cons thought it was. We'll see. I'm not sure, but $1 billion? Nah. I'm going to go out on a limb, and I don't think it's a very, weak limb on this, and say no. Josh McKenna, $9.99. Thank you, Josh. And says, I think the Twilight cast has their handprints at the famous theater. They do. I mean, I like Twilight. It's a fun franchise, but why do they have their handprints at the theater? Yeah, that's something that I disagree with. It's because Twilight at the time was a cultural phenomenon. But Twilight, hasn't stayed in the zeitgeist like a Star Wars has or a Harry Potter has. Twilight was hot and big between 2008 and about 2012 or whatever it was. And the cast of Twilight has their handprints and footprints at the Chinese theater in Hollywood next to Harrison Ford and fucking Clark Gable. It's like, are you fucking kidding me? And it's because it was, it's not something I would have done. But then again, Star Wars did as well at that time. When it came out, it did as well. But Star Wars, it's not that there isn't an argument to be made. It's not that there isn't an argument to be made for it. I just feel that, and this is just my own pure utopian way of looking at it. I just feel that these kinds of things should be reserved for true bona fide legends. Very much like, I forget who it was. Was it Robert that said this? I think it was you, Robert, that said, it was Robert that talked about the Hall of Fame thing. I wish it was treated like a Hall of Fame, and, in a way it is, but there are a lot of people that have their stars in the Walk of Fame that aren't Hall of Fame worthy, in my mind. And it's unfortunate because I think it dilutes the prestigiousness and the mystique of that Walk of Fame. When you can walk along it and see, Harrison Ford and God, there's so many legends on there. Elvis Presley, and, you see all these big names, and then you see some name like James Franco, and you're like, okay, I guess, and this is just my opinion, but when I think of Hollywood legends, James Franco does not come to mind. You can be a great actor. You can be a popular actor. Just as you can be a great baseball player. You can be a phenomenal baseball player and never make it into the Baseball Hall of Fame. You can have 350 home runs and never see the Hall of Fame. Do you know what I mean? It's reserved for the best of the best, But that's not how these things work. At least that's not how this works. It is what it is. Mendel Goodman says, Dave, the reason why most horror movies don't get Oscars is because they're mostly low-budget horror movies. I disagree. Yeah, there are great horror movies, but they aren't amazing Dark Knight-style movies. I disagree with that. I don't think that's the reason why. Halloween was a low-budget film, and it's a cultural phenomenon. I don't think that's the reason why movies don't get Oscar nominations. Again, it's not because something is low-budget. It's because horror movies have a stigma, generally speaking, okay? And they aren't telling the kind of human stories, character-driven stories, generally speaking, that appeal to a broader mass audience that would penetrate a zeitgeist and stir up an Oscar run and buzz like nobody's business. That's why. You could have a movie that costs $5 million that can win an Oscar. If it's an incredible film with an amazing story, with amazing characters, you can do it. You can absolutely do it. I think the reason why horror movies in general don't get nominated or don't get submitted is because most horror movies are not very good. Most horror movies are low budget stinkers, but the low budget isn't the causation for them not being nominated. It's the stories they're telling. They may be pedestrian. They may be formulaic. They may be been there, done that. How many fucking slasher? You know what I'm saying? Right? It takes a lot now. If horror, yes, I think horror doesn't get the respect it deserves. I agree with that 100%. But I also think horror doesn't do itself any favors either, right? So it's a bit of a double-edged sword. You know what I mean? All right. Have I got all the super chats? I want to make sure I've got all the super chats. I just want to make sure I've got them all. I think I do. I think I've got them all here. Want to make sure I've got them all. Got them all. Juan Rivera sends in a member chat. Thank you, Juan. And says, Dave, thoughts on this Gypsy Rose Blanchard and all of the fame she is receiving? What's with the love for crazy murders? Bundy, Dahmer, etc. Gypsy Rose Blanchard? Who's Gypsy Rose? I'm not familiar. And all the fame she is receiving. Is this somebody recent? Gypsy Rose? I'm not familiar. Juan, you'll have to clarify for me. I'm not sure what you mean. Robert Thidoff says, Dave, would you rather be nominated for an Oscar 5 times in a row, but lose each time to a former winner, or win just one Oscar against inferior competition? I would probably want to win, because even though the competition is inferior, that doesn't make me any less great. It's just was an easy year, so I won. You know, yeah, I mean, I think I'd rather win. That doesn't make it less deserved. You know, it doesn't, I mean, when the competition isn't as fierce, that doesn't make the winner less deserving of it. They were the best that year. It's not their problem that other filmmakers didn't release movies that were contending. It's not their fucking problem. I mean, if I make a fucking ripper of a movie, it's not my problem that others aren't making it, right? So, you know, or it doesn't even have to be incredible. It's just if my movie is the best one that year, good for me. Good for me. So yeah, I think I would probably take the win. I would take the win. Let me see here. I'm just looking for you guys talking amongst yourselves. That's good. Yeah, no, not really any questions. You guys talking more. Okay, what's the time here? All right, we'll go another 5 minutes. Another 5 minutes, and then we will call it a day. Raw Silly says, Dave, if someone makes a horror movie that captures people outside of the horror genre, they will be labeled woke by core horror fans, hence Get Out. I disagree with that. I think that's a blanket statement you're making. I mean, you know, think about what you just said, right? So let's break down what you just said. Dave, if someone makes a horror movie that captures people outside of the horror genre, right, they will be labeled woke. Well, why would they be labeled that? What makes you think that in order to capture people outside of the horror genre, you have to go woke? What makes you think that? We're talking about creating a story, right? A story that can appeal to a broader audience, right? Horror movies have a stigma of being, you know, bloody and gory and killing and scary and all that kind of stuff. Now, you can have that. But if you want to appeal to a broader audience, that doesn't mean you have to go woke, right? It doesn't mean that at all. I mean, I wouldn't necessarily say that Get Out was woke. I think Get Out actually, I really liked the movie. I thought it was a great film. I think it's Jordan Peele's best in the films that he's done. Just because listen, I understand what you're saying, but I disagree with what you're saying. I think there are many different ways you can go about it. I don't think appealing to a broader audience means you have to now make your movie woke. Oh, we got to include all these, diversity. Yeah, you can do that, but then that doesn't necessarily appeal to a broader audience either, right? Because then you get half the audience upset about that. Story. Character-driven films. That's what will appeal to a broader audience. And just because something has a you know, maybe it's about a gay couple or it's about that, doesn't mean in and of itself it's woke, right? Woke is tossed around too loosely nowadays. There are definitely woke things. There is definitely a woke problem, but not everything that has a woman in the lead or a black person in the lead or is suddenly woke, right? But there are people who are ill-informed who just glom onto buzzword. I'm not saying you. I'm not saying you. I'm speaking generally. There are people that are ill-informed that think that as soon as there's a woman in a movie or a black guy in the lead or whatever the case is, all of a sudden, oh, there's some wokeness here. No, that doesn't. Again, it's not automatically. They're not mutually, inclusive or exclusive or inclusive. Yeah. Anyway, so I get what you're saying, but I disagree with it in principle. I don't think it's automatically inevitable with what you're saying. Mandel Goodman says, Dave, the low budget limits the director to be able to make a great story. Incorrect. I think a higher budget would allow them to hire a greater writer and a great director if the budget is higher. Now, that's not true. That's not true. Again, if you're talking about, what are we talking about when we say low budget, right? Because remember, $5 million is low budget in Hollywood. $10 million, $20 million, $30 million is a low budget in Hollywood. Okay? Now, there's different thresholds of low budget, right? $30 million is obviously a larger budget than $5 million. But having a low budget in and of itself doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to limit the director. Now, why is that? Well, what is the story? What is the story you want to tell? Well, the story I want to tell is about this guy who is having strange dreams, and he wakes up in the middle of the night, and he has this feeling like it's a dream about this woman. He keeps seeing this woman in his dream, and he wakes up and he feels like he knows her, and he doesn't quite understand, and he's talking to his friends about it, and it's a very eerie film full of mood and atmosphere, and one day he thinks he sees the woman he's dreaming about on the street, and he goes after her, and she's gone, and he can't find her. It's like, oh my God, it's crazy, it's weird, all that kind of stuff, right? It's a story, and it's a horror film. It's a horror film. It's a thriller. There's lots of twists and turns in there and all that kind of stuff. That's a character-driven film. Great premise, right? Kind of creepy. Ooh, that's interesting. You could make that movie for $5 million. You could make that movie for $5 million because it's all in the writing. It's all in the writing, the performances, the directing, right? If the director has a story about, Superman, and he's got $5 million, okay, now we have a problem. Now the director has to sacrifice because his budget is too low. The budget's too low. The budget is too low. But the budget in and of itself doesn't mean that's why horror movies are not nominated. It doesn't mean that. How much did The Exorcist cost? Now, I understand it was 1973, so we'd have to adjust it for inflation. But let's look here, just for shits and giggles. The Exorcist budget was $30 million. Is that adjusted for inflation? Probably not. It was $30 million in 1973. Whew, higher than I thought it was going to be. So that might not be the best example. But the principle is still the same. So maybe it might even be $100 million today with all the effects and everything. So that's probably not the best example. But the principle is still the same. Mandel, budget does not mean... How big your budget is can limit the director in terms of their resources. Yes, absolutely. But that depends on what the story is, right? The story in and of itself, like what you're saying there is you're saying that the low budget limits the director to be able to make a great story. Theoretically, I think a higher budget would allow them to hire. All that is true, what you're saying, but that doesn't mean that you can't make a great story, an Oscar-worthy film with $5 million. You absolutely can. You absolutely can. So although budget can limit the director, what's the story? What's the story? Right? Big special effects, car crashes, big makeup effects. That doesn't mean you're going to get, I mean, listen, it depends on what you get nominated. Do you want to get nominated for best visual effects? Okay. Do you want to get nominated for best director and best picture? It doesn't fucking matter what your budget is. It doesn't matter how good your effects are. It doesn't matter, right? Creating stories that penetrate the zeitgeist into appealing to a broader audience about the human spirit and a character-driven film, whether it's a horror movie or not, is not necessarily automatically indicative of its budget. You can create, I tell you right now, you give me $5 million, you give me $10 million, I'll go out and create Port Robinson Road. It's a character-driven film. I'm not saying it's going to win an Oscar, but I'll go out and create Port Robinson Road, and it will probably have broad appeal to it because of the subject matter, right? It's a very philosophical film, and it's a horror film at the same time. So I get what you're saying in principle. Like, what you're saying is true. A budget can limit the director and what the director can do. Right. But what's the story? Okay, the budget is $5 million. Okay. They say you have $5 million. Well, you write a $5 million movie. That's what you do. So are we saying that $5 million movies can't be Oscar-winning films? Because that's not true. That's not true at all. So I think it's important to remember that yes, what you're saying is right, but then you mold your story. You write a story that is indicative of a $5 million budget or a $10 million budget or a $20 million budget. And how you allocate those funds will have huge impact on your story. It's Me, Billy Chapter 2, okay, cost Canadian dollars about 140,000 Canadian dollars. But we don't have any. But at face value, when you watch the movie, you might go, this cost $140,000? Because you're not seeing explosions. You're not seeing big, heavy makeup effects, right? You're not seeing somebody walk on fire. You're not seeing, it's going to look like, well, where did the money go? Well, the money went into the performers. The money, because everybody got a raise. The money went into the crew. It's now a unionized shoot. Production insurance, craft services, flights, hotels, all this, like, where you allocate your money can also be indicative of how good or not good your movie looks. There's a lot of independent movies out there, horror movies, that you watch and you're like, this looks like it was shot for $5, but the effects are amazing. Well, that's where this cost $90,000. Well, yeah, because 85,000 of it probably went into the effects, but not into the camera work, not into the equipment, not into the actors, right? Not into the crew, which is why it looks home movie. Do you know what I mean? And it's like, oh, so that just because you have $140,000 or $200,000 or $5 million or $10 million, where does it go? How do you allocate that money? One of the biggest feedbacks that we got, one of the biggest positive feedbacks that we got on the first It's Me, Billy was, you made this for $60,000? This looks like you spent $6 million on this. Yes, because of where we chose to allocate the funds and the money, right? And the same thing will be said for Chapter 2. So in principle, what you're saying is bang on. It's true. Like, what you're saying is true. But it isn't an automatic causation of why horror movies are not nominated for Oscars, right? Because again, write a $5 million film or write a $800,000 film, that's just a great film, a great story that's creepy and eerie and spend that money wisely. Do you know what I mean? So I get what you're saying, but I disagree in that sense. Brandon Collins says, Nomadland cost $5 million and it won Best Picture. Godzilla Minus One cost $15 million and won Best Visual Effects. Budget doesn't mean anything. Could not agree more. Those are great examples. Much better than the Exorcist example. Yeah, no, it's true. There's so many, like, I've seen a lot of independent films that, you know, look like the spirit is there, the heart is there. And I'll look at the budget and I'm like, wow, they had like 50 grand to make this. And this looks like it was shot on their dad's camcorder. Why? Where did the money go? And then usually about halfway through, I see like some really cool, epic, gory kill. And I'm like, oh, there it is. Right? So you have to be smart about that type of thing. You know, when Bruce and I did chapter 2 for Billy, you know, yes, it was more expensive, obviously, because we had allocated Olivia's salary and everything that it was to get her there, her flights, her hotel, everything that it was going to cost. When she had to back out because of health, we reinvested the money that was going to go to Olivia back into the project. So we reinvested into the crew. We reinvested into the hotel. I don't mean changing hotels to some swanky like Hilton. No, everybody just was at like the Holiday Inn or something, but we were able to give everybody their own room now, which was nice. And then we reinvested it back into equipment and rental of certain equipment that we didn't have before. And we just reinvested all back into the film. And it was very important for us to do that, to show that we respect our crew and we respect them, because, man, you gotta, and these are like working professionals. You know, these aren't they're our friends now, but these aren't just like our buddies who we've asked to volunteer their time. These are professionals that do this all the time. And so if you have the money to pay your crew well, do it, because the crew, and feed your crew well, feed your actors and your crew well, within your means, within your budget, obviously. But that was a very important thing for us too, to be able to make sure that they're well taken care of. They stay at a nice hotel. They have their own rooms so they can go back, sleep. You know what I mean? They're well fed, and it wasn't anything fancy. I'm not talking about I had the whole thing like this big, huge, you know, but they were well fed, and that's important, because the crew is going to, because listen, the crew, you can't do anything without that fucking crew. Watching the crew work and do their shit, it's a team effort, you know, and I've learned a lot from the two crews. Some overlap because we had some of the same people on both. We had some new people on chapter 2 as well. I've learned a lot, and I would like to think I'm a better filmmaker and a wiser filmmaker and a better director today, having done those two films. So anyway, I digress, but it's interesting. Yeah, it's how much a movie costs absolutely can dictate what you can do, for sure, but that doesn't mean in and of itself, that isn't the reason why horror movies are not nominated for Oscars, because a lot of them happen to be low budget, because a lot of them happen to be, you know, gateway, you know, it's a gateway genre for a lot of filmmakers. Not at all. Not at all. That's not the reason. All right. Okay. We'll go a little bit longer here. Why not? We'll take this thing to 2 hours. 5 more minutes. 5 more minutes. 5 more minutes left in the show, folks. 5 more minutes left in the show. And I got all the super chats, right? Just want to make sure I did. Let me go back here. Where am I here? I believe I have. Yes, I believe I have. Okay, good. Just want to make sure. Ladies and germs. It's been a good show today, though. Dave Bob Petway says, Dave, what do you think can play bigger role in people's opinion of their love and or hatred for a movie? Nostalgia or recency bias? I would say maybe a little bit of both. I think that's a great question. I would say that I think recency bias probably plays a little bit into it more than nostalgia. I think one of the biggest problems we have today with fandom is that fans just, you know, they are And this didn't happen years ago. And that doesn't mean there weren't bad movies years ago. And that doesn't mean that people didn't not like movies, years ago. But online fandom has destroyed a lot of the real authentic response to a lot of movies. This would make a great show, but because there is so much hate watching now that's happening, and people tune into certain channels, the culture war channels, just to hear them hate and just to bitch and moan and complain. When channels nowadays, channels that have so much influence, are telling you to hate a movie before a movie even comes out. I mean, I don't, how can you go in? You think you go in objectively. Oh, sure. You think you go in objectively, but it's unconscious. You don't. You don't go in. And I've talked about this before on the channel, so I don't want to get into a deep dive on it. But I think it's sad that a lot of movies nowadays don't have a hope in hell of having genuine... There's reasons why you'll see average moviegoers that are not caught up in the nonsense you see online end up liking a movie that surprises you. Because I don't mean you, I just mean you in a general sense. So many of us tend to get caught up in the nonsense online that it's very rare for us to go into a movie objective. I mean, I remember when I was very fortunate to see Halloween 18 at the world premiere here in Toronto in 2018. I saw the movie 6 weeks before most of you got a chance to see it, because the premiere was at TIFF in Toronto, which is at the beginning of September. And of course, the movie wasn't released till the middle of October. I remember I went online on my channel, and if you follow me for any length of time, you might remember this too. I went online and I made a video where I said, I gave kind of a general kind of thought on it. And I said, but I'm not going to release my thoughts on it. I'm not going to talk about it until the movie comes out, because I want all of you to have seen it. I don't want what I think of the movie to influence you. Now, I could do that, and I still can do that, because my channel, this is not my job. I mean, yes, I make money from super chats and all that kind of stuff, and from, subscriptions, but it's not, it's not enough to live on. It's maybe, listen, right now, a few super chats came in after YouTube takes their fees. I might get $40 from, today's show or something, right? It's always pocket change, which I really appreciate. And I love and thank you so much. And it goes back in the channel and it pays for my time and all that kind of stuff. And that's amazing. And you guys are awesome. I love you guys. But the channels that lean heavily into this kind of stuff, it's their jobs. It's what they do. And they make boatloads of money from it. And so they come on and they spoil movies and tell you what they think before they come out, because they know it's going to get clicks and views and likes and all that kind of stuff. But I remember when I said I wasn't going to do that, the backlash I got, I don't know if you guys remember that, but the backlash I got from quite a few Halloween fans pissed off at me that I wasn't going to tell them what I thought of the movie. And I said, well, it's for your own fucking good. Because I know you watch every fucking thing I do. And I know you hang on every fucking word I say. And if I tell you it's dog shit and I spend 30 minutes telling you it's dog shit, you're going to go in expecting dog shit. And there's even going to be a part of you that's going to think it's dog shit because that's what you're expecting. And the guy, the Halloween guy you love to watch says it's dog shit. So it must be dog shit. I don't want that for you. And so I didn't. And I stood my ground and I didn't. But I got quite a bit of backlash. It was crazy. And I was like, no, I'm not going to do that. But there's a lot of channels that get caught up in the culture war that have to do that. And that make no apologies for doing that. Because it's their jobs. It's what they do. It's how they make money. They get hundreds of thousands of views and thousands of people watching. It's what they do. And they know the hate videos get the views. And so I don't know. It's just sad. I mean, I'm 45 years old. I grew up through the 80s and the 90s. And I remember when, the only way you knew a movie was coming out was if you paid attention to a TV ad or you saw it in the back of a newspaper. I mean, that's it. and you just like, gone are the days where like, not even trailers. I mean, you look at hey, like where are the, like, do you remember the days of, hey, do you want to go see a movie tonight? Like, do people even say that anymore? Like a spur of the moment thing. You had no plans to see a movie. You're like, hey, what's playing? What's out? Do you remember those days? Those of you that are old enough, do you remember those days? Hey, what's playing at the movie theater? Let's check the paper. Oh, hey, that looks good. Oh, hey, that sounds good. Do you remember those days? There was nobody influencing you. There was nobody telling you, don't go fucking see that, you piece of shit. It's garbage. Nobody was saying that. You just went, it looked good either because of the poster or that 1 30-second commercial you happened to see, right? And you were like, hey, let's go see that. And that was also back in the day when people went to see movies because who was in it? Movie stars, right? Because there was still a mystique around them. You know what I'm saying? Now that's all gone. But it's like, those days are gone. Those days are gone. And so many people just, they choose whether they go see a movie based on what some culture war channel is saying. I miss the days when you could, and I understand, but I miss the days where there wasn't so much heavy influence from so many people that don't know their fucking ass from their elbow with what they're talking about half the time. And now there's some great channels out there too. There's some great channels out there that do know what they're talking about, and they're inquisitive and they're astute and they're informed and they're educated and they're brilliant. They know what they're talking about. And then there's channels that just, my God, like it's crazy to me. But I miss those days because I believe today, I truly believe today, this is going to be a bold statement. I believe that a lot of the movies, I'm not going to name which ones because I don't know off the top of my head, but I believe that there are a fair amount of movies released today that people end up hating or even loving that they would feel very differently about if there was no influence coming from here. And that doesn't mean that there wasn't word of mouth back in the day. There was always word of mouth. But I mean the heavy, everyday, in your face, social media, influencer, movie sphere. Because, you know, what would people think of, I'm trying to think of a movie that's been, you know, I don't know, like if Dial of Destiny had come out 30 years ago, you know, what would people have thought? I don't know. You know, no, people don't think this shit. I disagree. I disagree. I think there's quite a few movies that, because maybe that in some ways too, that's what recency bias is. You know, like in a lot of ways, there have been people that have watched movies, hated movies, and then a few years down the road when things have died down and the fuel isn't quite as hot and the culture war channels they've been getting their news from have moved on to other things, they rewatch a movie and they go, actually, you know what? It's not that bad. Yeah, because you've got distance from it now emotionally. You're not watching it like this. You're not watching it like that. You're watching it a bit more objective now. And you look at it and you go, oh, that's actually not that bad. You know, and so it probably plays a huge part. And I just wish more people, there's nothing wrong with watching your favorite channel. There's nothing, and listen, there's a lot of shit. And it's not that everything these culture war channels talk about, they don't have some valid points on. I just think it's important that we don't become echo chambers. We don't become a groupthink society, and we still manage to think for ourselves and not be afraid to say, I liked it. I know half the universe doesn't, but I liked it. Don't be afraid. If you really feel that way in your heart, love what you love, hate what you hate. But don't let anybody else influence you that way. All right, and I'm over time again. Thumbstick Warrior sends in $5. Thanks, buddy. Says, have you been following the Masters of the Universe movie news? They've casted He-Man again, and the story is a fish out of water story with He-Man. I have seen it. I haven't talked about it at length on the channel. Not crazy on the casting of He-Man. He-Man to me is gigantic, and I don't know, no matter how many roids or protein this guy inhales. I don't think he's going, for me anyway, he's not going to be the He-Man that I always envision, but we'll see. I'm watching with curious eyes. Still, we're in its sort of, preliminary stages at the moment. So not a lot of news, but, as a big He-Man fan from the 80s, I definitely am watching with curious eyes. Alley Girl says, I couldn't wait to get the paper to see the movies. Right? You know what I'm talking about. That's what I mean. It's like, I miss those days, and I understand, everything evolves, but it's just, we know so much about a movie. That's my point. We know so much about a movie today before it's even released. We know so much, and we're being told we have to hate this movie because of this, and this before it's even come out. And I miss the days where you just saw the poster and went, guys, do yourself a fucking favor. Do yourself a favor. Try this. Because I did this about 2 years ago and it was really cool. That's how I came across, oh God, brain fart. I hate getting old. That's how I came across. Anyways, I was doing this on Netflix. It'll come to me. I was doing this on Netflix, and I would look for movies I had never heard of, horror movies, but not even. I would look for movies I had never heard of, horror, thriller, whatever, and I would read the Netflix blurb, which usually isn't great, but but I would read the blurb, and if the premise sounded interesting to me, I had never heard of this movie, like literally never heard of this movie. If the premise sounded interesting to me, I would begin watching it. And holy fuck, that's how I discovered Incident in a Ghostland, excuse me. I was like, holy shit. I think that movie is really underrated. And by the end of that movie, I was like, holy fuck, that movie was great. Now, you go online and you read the reviews, Rotten Tomatoes score, but I was like, it was great. What's that other one I always talk about? Not Intruder, not Invasion, the fuck. I hate getting old. Why is this happening? Anyway, there is a lot of movies I've done that with. Try doing that. Don't let anybody else tell you about it. Don't look up a trailer. Because a lot of you do that. You'll find a movie and you look at a trailer for it. Don't watch the trailer. Just read the premise. Look at the poster or the thumbnail. If it sounds like it might be interesting and up your alley, watch it. Watch it. You're going to surprise yourself. Because then you're going to go to Rotten Tomatoes and you're going to find, not all the time, but then you're going to go Rotten Tomatoes, you'll find, oh wow, this only has 36%? What the fuck? I thought it was amazing. Do you know what I mean? And that's what it was like back in the day. There was no influence. There was no, yes, there was always word of mouth, but there was no, do you know what I mean? It was just better. So that happens. That does happen. Fuck. The Ritual, that's it. Thank you, Eddie. Fuck. I hate getting old, man. I hate getting old. That's it. Thank you, Eddie. I appreciate that. The Ritual. Yeah. I had never heard of it. Never heard of it. Saw the premise. I was like, well, saw the premise, read the premise, saw the thumbnail. I was like, this sounds interesting. Hit play. By the end of the movie, it is literally one of my favorite horror movies of all time. Of all time. I was like, that was fucking great. Like, do you know what I mean? But if I had read the Rotten Tomatoes score, which actually I think is pretty good, but if I had been listening to people who were like, fuck yeah, you know what I mean? Do that, folks. Go to Netflix, find a thumbnail, read a blurb. Don't watch the trailer. Don't. Just get some munchies and hit play and watch it. And if you really like it, wow, holy shit. We tend to only gravitate to what we're told to gravitate through, subliminal means. It's fascinating. Frank Riker says, for the sexy MFers in the chat. What's going on, Frank? Amazing. Great to see you here. I'm just about to wrap up. Rick the Unlovable. Oh, Rick, you're lovable. You're lovable. $9.99. Thanks, buddy. Says, hey, Dave, was wondering if you saw the new James Gunn Superman set links. Oh, God, I just talked about it. I think Superman in his new suit looks fantastic. I just talked about it earlier in the stream. I have seen it. I think it looks really great, too. And all those people that are bitching and moaning and complaining are just looking for something to bitch and moan about, and have to remember that you're seeing a paparazzi photo. I mean, it's just, it's not a promotional image. Relax. The suit is going to look great when the movie comes out. I guarantee it. All right, folks, listen, that is going to do it for me here on this episode of McRae Live. Went longer than I wanted to, but fascinating stuff to talk about here today. Really, really great show. Thank you to my moderators. You are amazing. Thank you to the super chat questions that came in today. Really appreciate that. And thank you for, what else was I going to say? Super chat. Just thanks for hanging out with me. Thanks for hanging out with me. I really appreciate it. To my members, reminder, this Thursday night, 7:00 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, a member-only Q&A will be happening this Thursday night, so don't forget to tune in to that. Folks, you are amazing. If you're watching after the fact, jump into the comment section below and let me know your thoughts on anything I had to anything I had to say here today. I would really appreciate it. Have a great rest of your... Oh, Frank is... did I forget something? Did I forget a super chat? Frank is, did I forget a super chat? I don't think I did. Let me go back. Frank is hitting the angry face. So I'm not sure. I don't think I did, Frank. Oh, I did. You're right. Brandon Collins, $5. Thank you very much, Frank. Sorry, Brandon. My apologies. The anonymity of the internet gives people permission to be the worst possible versions of themselves. Hear, I could not agree more. They speak in superlatives. I got to get the right phonetic on that. Superlatives, and are shallow as fuck. You are correct. Absolutely. Well, absolutely. That's a word. Absolutely speak in superlatives and are shallow as fuck. You are. No, the anonymity of the internet has just made it, everybody they think they can say, hey, listen, as I say, if you have something to say, make a channel and say it. Don't hide behind a screen, man. I didn't. And, so yeah, I could not agree more. Folks, have a great rest of your Tuesday night, and thanks for hanging out with me. Thanks for the show, and I will talk to you all soon. In the meantime, in between time, cheers.